in the Gospel of Mark. We are in chapter 9. And, based on my looking here, we might go over into the next year, especially if Christmas comes around and we do some Christmas-themed messages. But we will finish this book. And today we're going to cover quite a few verses, so I'll try to start quickly here. But before we get into the text, I want to ask if you've ever had one of those moments in your life, or a moment that you didn't want to end. Maybe something special happened. Maybe it was the day of your birthday, you woke up, you had your favorite breakfast, the music that you love is playing in the background, you're surrounded by your favorite people, you're doing your favorite things, and I don't know if you know that kind of day I'm talking about. A good day or a good moment, maybe a moment with your grandkids or with your kids that was just extra lovely and peaceful. But then, after a great moment or a great day, comes the next day. And that moment isn't as good as the previous day. The high of whatever activity you were doing, whatever great day you had, now wears down, wears off, and you're back to the regular old paying for the bills, washing the dishes, conflict at work, deadlines to be met, and your perfect day has come and gone. Now, as Christians, we might also have those, what I want to call this morning, mountaintop moments. A worship night where God felt close. Every song that was sung, the lyrics spoke to you, to your heart. Maybe you went to a retreat and you felt God speak to you. A beautiful moment where your faith is encouraged. A retreat, a breakthrough in prayer, a special morning, a sermon that spoke exactly to your situation and you felt encouraged. And then Monday hits and you're off the mountain. The mountaintop high experience now brings you down to the valley. If you're new to following Jesus, or you've only been following Jesus for a little while, then maybe it was the time where you decided to follow Christ. Maybe it was a time where someone you know, or maybe you were baptized and you felt, this is my turning point, and then temptations knocked at your door the next week. Or that time where you started a Bible reading plan, maybe at the beginning of this year. By the way, there's still reading plans in the back. It's never too late to start. But then you got to Leviticus and Numbers, and your reading plan just kind of faded. Or maybe there's been times in your life where God has answered prayer, where you had a prayer request, and God answered. But now you pray and nothing gets answered. Maybe finally you got the courage to tell a friend that you're a Christian, a coworker, that you go to church, but then they just fired questions at you that you just couldn't answer. So now you're like, I shouldn't have told them. Or if you've been following Jesus for years, maybe you have one of those mornings where you remember and read and recite Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, and in that morning, God ministers to you, you feel great, you're going to work, and then you get this feisty little email from somebody that just makes you angry. Come down from the mountain, right? Maybe you've prayed for a prodigal son, a prodigal daughter, and there's a glimmer of hope, and everything seems like it's going to change, and then another relapse. Or maybe you entered retirement, ready to serve, excited that you get to rest, and then you get hit with loneliness and a lack of purpose. And this moment that you had from the mountaintop now to the valley. Now here's the reality. We love the mountain. We seek the mountain. We seek those feelings of being alive and emotions stirred, and we feel good. But most of life happens, my friends, in the valley. And the descent from the valley to from the mountain to the valley can feel jarring. A contrast that feels uncomfortable. So here's where we're going today as we read this passage. Here's one sentence that might summarize this message this morning, and that is, there is glory on the mountain, but faith required in the valley. Glory on the mountain, but faith in the valley. In Mark 9, Jesus takes 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. They go up a high mountain. A cloud surrounds them. A voice is going to speak. Moses and Elijah, 2 important figures, are going to appear. Jesus shines, but then the cloud lifts, and only Jesus remains. And then there's a voice that says, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." Now here's the point. The goal isn't to stay on the mountain. The point is to trust Jesus when you come down the mountain, as we're going to find out. So here's how we're going to walk the text today, since it's a lengthy passage. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to see the glory in the mountain. We're going to see this transfiguration moment. Then we're going to follow Jesus down into the valley. The disciples ask some questions. And then we're going to see what it means to be in the valley, to rely on Jesus' power when you're suddenly faced with an obstacle. And so as we read this passage, we're going to read verses 2 to 29, so it is quite a bit of reading. But I want you to listen for 3 key phrases that you can remember. First, the voice of God. "This is my beloved Son." Listen for that. Then, the prayer of a desperate man. "I believe. Help my unbelief." And lastly, the lesson for the disciples. This kind can come out only by prayer. Listen for these phrases. Let's read together, starting in verse 2. Mark chapter 9, verse 2. "After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain by themselves to be alone. He was transfigured in front of them, and his clothes became dazzling, extremely white, as no launder on earth could whiten them. Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, 'Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let's set up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah.' Because he did not know what to say, since they were terrified. A cloud appeared, overshadowing them, and a voice came from the cloud. 'This is my beloved Son. Listen to him.' Suddenly looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept this word to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. Then they asked him, 'Why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?' 'Elijah does come first and restores all things,' he replied. 'Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did whatever they pleased to him, just as it is written about him.' When they came to the disciples," so they come down the mountain, they see the disciples, "they saw a large crowd around them and scribes disputing with them. When the whole crowd saw him, they were amazed and ran to greet him. He asked them, 'What are you arguing with them about?' Someone from the crowd answered him, 'Teacher, I brought my son to you. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they couldn't.' He replied to them, 'You unbelieving generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring him to me.' So they brought the boy to him. When the spirit saw him, it immediately threw the boy into convulsions. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. How long has this been happening to him? Jesus asked his father. From childhood, he said. And many times it has thrown him into fire or water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. He said to him, if you can, everything is possible for the one who believes. Immediately the father of the boy cried out, I do believe. Help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that a crowd was quickly gathering, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. Then it came out, shrieking and throwing him into terrible convulsions. The boy became like a corpse, so that many said, he's dead. But Jesus, taking him by the hand, raised him, and he stood up. After he had gone into the house, his disciples asked him privately, why couldn't we drive it out? And he told them, this kind can come out by nothing but prayer. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You're still with me? This is a long passage. But let's walk through the text together. Verse 2. If you notice here, Mark goes out of his way to give extra details. Mark, as we've grown accustomed, is used to saying, immediately, this happened, then that happened, immediately, this happened. But here in this moment is one of the few times where he actually gives you concrete details. After 6 days, so last week we saw Jesus telling people to take up their cross and follow him. And then after 6 days, he takes Peter, James, and John. He leads them up a high mountain by themselves to be alone. And he was transfigured in front of them. I don't know if you caught those details. 6 days, high mountains, 3 disciples. He's not rushing, which means this text here is very important for Mark. Verse 3 says his clothes became dazzling, extremely white. Now, this isn't just spotlight shining on Jesus. What he's trying to tell us is that there's glory coming from within Jesus. His divine nature is showing here. He's dazzling like the sun. Verse 4, Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. Why is this here? Why is it important that Moses and Elijah appear in this text? Well, because Moses represented God giving the people of Israel a covenant, the 10 Commandments. He embodied the law. And Elijah embodied the prophets, the time that God would speak to the people through the prophets. And they're standing with Jesus not as equals, but as witnesses to something important taking place. Now, Peter, of course it's Peter. He's always doing something, saying something. He can't stay quiet. He can't hold back. He says, Rabbi, let's do something about this. Let's build up a tent. Let's put up a shelter here. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And now he does this because they're actually terrified. So he doesn't know how to react. He doesn't know what to do. Peter's nervous. He grabs for something else to do. Sometimes that's how we feel, right? When we get this moment, when God speaks to us and something comes our way, we don't know how to react anymore. We don't know what to do. I want to stay in this moment forever. He wants to freeze the moment, but God actually has something for him to learn, something better. Verse 7, now this is the heartbeat of the whole passage here. A cloud appeared, it overshadows them, and a voice comes from heaven that says, this is my beloved Son, listen to him. Now there's an exclamation point here. That's because this is a command. It's not a suggestion. And the text doesn't say, this is Jesus, admire him. It doesn't say, this is Jesus, my beloved Son, Add him to your life as an add-on. No, it says, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Which means anything that Jesus says, we need to listen to. And then verse 8, suddenly looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. The cloud lifts, and who remains there? Jesus. Not Moses, not Elijah, not the old covenant, not the old law, not the prophets, but Jesus alone. Now, if you haven't connected the dots here, I want to help you connect the dots. I want to take you back and make you think about the Old Testament. Think back to Moses specifically. Do you remember the story of the 10 Commandments when they were given to Moses? Where did he go? He went up a mountain. And he was up a mountain, and when you read the story, there's smoke that surrounds the mountain. There's a voice from heaven that speaks to Moses. And when Moses comes down the mountain, it says he was shining. But here's the difference. Moses was reflecting light. He was reflecting God's light, like the moon reflecting the light of the sun. In this story, they go up a mountain. There's clouds. There's a voice from heaven. But the shining light is not coming from another source. It's coming from Jesus himself, which means he is God. He is the light. He doesn't need to reflect light. He produces light. It also symbolized that Moses fades, Elijah fades, but Jesus remains. He's the one they need to follow now, that we follow now. And the Father gives us the application right there in verse 7. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Now, why give us this glimpse here in this part of the Gospel of Mark? Why show them this in this moment? Well, because just before this, in Mark 8:31, message we saw last week, Jesus told them that he was going to suffer, that he needed to die. And right after Mark 9:14, as we saw, they walk into a valley of arguments. People are arguing. A valley of failure. The disciples are not able to do their job. And a valley of a desperate dad in need for something. And so the Father is giving them a glimpse of glory. Why does he do this? To strengthen them. God is always in the business of strengthening his children. See, they just heard a tough message that they couldn't understand. Jesus, you're going to die? We don't get it. And then they're about to go into a very dark season. And so the Father gives them a glimpse of glory, a moment of hope, a moment of a high mountaintop experience to strengthen their faith as they're about to go into the valley. And I argue that he does the same thing for us as well. God does that for us today. Moments when God feels unusually close, when you open your Bible and something speaks to you, when you feel the presence of God strongly in your life. Beautiful moments of prayer, an encouraging word, a strong emotion toward God. Some people are afraid of feeling emotions, or they say, don't trust your emotions. You shouldn't trust your emotions all the time. But emotions could be a good thing. Sometimes we are full of emotion toward God, right? We want to display it. That's why we sing songs that say we dance and we shout with joy. It's an emotion. But the emotions will fade. And when they do fade, you can't hold on to those emotions forever. But God often gives us those moments, not so that we stay in that moment forever, but so we'll remember who he is when Monday hits, when it feels dry, when you wake up in the morning and you get bad news. You remember God is with me. He showed me his glory. I saw him in the mountain. I have to trust him in the valley. Glory on the mountain, faith in the valley. But here's the problem. It's hard to trust Jesus in the valley because we often treat Jesus like a consultant, right? Just another voice in our panel of voices. We have the voice of our career, the voice of our culture, the voice of our family, friends, and Jesus gets a voice too, but not the voice in your life. So I want to encourage you this week, just five minutes, 3 practices. I encourage you to take 5 unhurried minutes. If you want to do more, then please do more. But I just want you to read, if you have 5 minutes to do this, Mark 9:2-8, read it out loud, and then pray this prayer. Jesus, you are the beloved Son. I listen to you. Start your day with that. Think about that. No requests from God, no lists. Just, you are the beloved Son, and I listen to you. Because it can be so easy. We have so many things that we need, right? God, help me with this. Do this for me. Please do this. Please do that. But sometimes we need to come to God and say, God, what are you saying? I listen to you. I have all my requests. I know what I want you to do. But what do you want to do? What are you showing me? Where are you trying to lead me? What decision might be in front of you right now? Maybe you have to make a choice soon about doing something, embarking on a career, or looking for a job. I don't know, whatever it is. Have you stopped and asked, Jesus, what do you have to say about this? Jesus, am I making a decision because I want to expand my kingdom? Or am I making this decision because I want to expand your kingdom? I want to share your message with people. And this could be applied to anything we do in life. Am I making this decision? Why am I making this decision? God, what do you say? Now, Peter wanted to freeze that moment. And we want to freeze those moments where everything goes great. But I invite you to maybe even write in or fill in this line. Verse 8 and verse 7. Because Jesus is the Son of God, I will listen to him in this area of my life. You fill in whatever it is. And so we continue here. We follow Jesus down the mountain. The disciples follow Jesus down the mountain. The path that leads down, verse 9, as they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. In other words, don't share it with anyone. Don't post it yet. Don't preach it, at least not yet. Now, why? Why the secrecy? Why does he want them to tell everybody about this wonderful moment? Because the mountain, again, was a preview. It wasn't the premiere. It was a glimpse that only makes sense after the cross and after the empty tomb. They're not going to understand until that happens, and that hasn't happened yet. We're going to get there. Verse 10 says, they kept this word to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. Now, if I was them, I would be questioning in my heart the exact same thing. What does he mean, rising from the dead? They believed in the resurrection probably eventually when people died. They believed at the end time people might resurrect. But Jesus dying right now, they still couldn't believe what Jesus had said, that he must suffer and die. It didn't make sense to them. Then in verse 11, they asked Jesus, Jesus, why do the scribes say Elijah must come first? Now, it's a good question from their perspective. See, they knew the Old Testament. They knew the prophecies. The prophet Malachi prophesied these words, I will send Elijah before the great and terrible day of the Lord. And so they're expecting Elijah to come. As they had seen Elijah on the mountain, they're like, is this the moment now? We just saw Elijah. That means Jesus is going to be the king we expect him to be. When we go down this mountain, he's going to make an army appear. We're going to destroy the Romans. We're going to take our homeland back. Do we win now? Is that what's going on? But then Jesus crushes those thoughts and says in verse 12, Elijah does come first and restores everything. But then Jesus shifts their focus and says, and why is it written that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be treated with contempt? That's also a prophecy. See, they held on to all the glory prophecies. They held on to all the prophecies where there's victory, where there's mountain high top experiences. They held on to everything where they won, where there was no suffering, no pain. But they missed or overlooked or forgot every passage in the Old Testament, in Isaiah, in Ezekiel, in the Psalms, the prophecies of suffering. They wanted hope without the cost. Now Jesus is lovingly correcting that, and in verse 13, he lands the point and tells them, Elijah has come. And they did whatever they pleased to him, just as it is written. Now, Elijah the prophet in the Old Testament, if you read those stories, he preached a message, and just like Israel did every single time, they heard it, and then they went back to their old selves. But Jesus isn't just talking about that Elijah. He's referencing John the Baptist. John the Baptist came and preached and said, repent. And what did they do to John the Baptist at this point in the story? Where is John the Baptist? He's dead, right? They already imprisoned him. They already killed him. He came. He was bold. He was fearless. He preached a gospel of repentance. And what happened? Rejected, imprisoned, beheaded. Now, if they treated John the Baptist like that, and if they paid careful attention to the prophecies, they would know that Jesus was next. He was going to be taken and killed. But they don't want to accept that fact, that truth. You see, the mountain was real, but it was a glimpse. The glory was true, but the path still leads through suffering. That's the rhythm of the kingdom of God. There's a cross before there's a crown. There's suffering before there's glory. So why does this matter for us? Because this is where many of us stumble. We want resurrection without death. And death hurts. We want triumph without the trouble. We want to stay on the mountain, but Jesus leads us to the valley. Jesus said of his disciples, and Paul also says, if Jesus suffered, if there's trials, why do you expect your life to just be easy? We want the mountain experiences without having faith in the valley. And when the valley gets dark, we start asking, if God loved me, this wouldn't be happening to me. If God loved me, this wouldn't happen. But the mountain says the opposite. I will sustain you through the suffering. I will give you hope. I'll give you glimpse. I'll give you what you need to hold on to, so that when you walk into grief, you don't forget who he is. He gives you the strength. He shows you a glimpse, so you keep trusting when the fog settles. Now, Jesus told his disciples that he would die, that he would raise again. Jesus said the mountain wouldn't make sense until he rose. So I ask you this, and I want to encourage you with this. When your week feels heavy, and you wake up in the morning and you have no strength to keep going on, when the valley just feels long, stretches long, say it to your soul. This will end in the hope of resurrection. Say it when you visit the doctor. Say it after you have a hard meeting. This all ends in resurrection, in restoration, in the hope of Jesus. We will be on that mountain one day. But now we have to have faith and trust in the valley. Now, all this stuff that I just mentioned, living with a hope of resurrection, believing in Jesus, believing in these words, believing Jesus was transfigured in a mountain and there was clouds and a voice, all this sounds like complete, utter foolishness to people who don't know Jesus, who don't have faith in Jesus. If somebody hears me saying these words and reading this text and they don't know God, they'd be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. These things didn't happen. But I've been with Jesus. I've felt Jesus on the mountaintop. I've seen what he can do in people's lives. I've experienced that glory moment. I know Jesus is real. And if you've never experienced that, then you don't know what it feels like to trust him in the moments where everything just seems hopeless. When you receive a diagnosis that you didn't want to receive. When someone you love dies. And it just feels hopeless. But when you know who Jesus actually is and what he is going to do, and you trust in the promises that he gives, then it is power. Foolishness to the world, but power to those who believe that Jesus is the truth. Power that sustains you in the valleys of this life. Now they come off the mountain and they walk straight into a mess. A crowd, they're arguing, the scribes are arguing, the other 9 disciples are waiting for Jesus. They're probably red-faced and sweating, empty-handed because they couldn't do something that they were asked to do. Then a father steps forward, verses 17 and 18. Basically, he says, "Teacher, I brought my son. I asked your disciples." And then it ends with, "But they couldn't." They couldn't. Now, let that line land for the disciples who claim to be following Jesus. They know that Jesus does miracles. They've done miracles before in Jesus' name, but they just couldn't. I couldn't, Jesus. I couldn't do it. That sentence probably stung the disciples, and it can sting us today when we try to follow Jesus. When we try to be good parents, when we try to be good leaders, when I try to be a good pastor, a good small group leader, when you try to have a good marriage and it just doesn't work out, and so you just say, I couldn't. They couldn't. We prayed, we tried, we did everything we knew, and it didn't work. We couldn't heal. We couldn't fix the relationship. We couldn't reach them. We couldn't fix it. It's that moment that you hit your limit and you still care, but you don't know what to do. And in that exhaustion, Jesus says, in verse 19, he ends with, "Bring him to me." Yes, he scolds them a little bit, because sometimes we do need a scolding. Sometimes we do need a little bit of disciplined words in our life. Sometimes we do need to take responsibility for the things that we do. But at the end of the day, Jesus says, "Bring him to me. Bring the situation to me. Come to me." When your strength fades away, bring it to the one whose strength never fades away. When you've hit your limit, go to the limitless one. Yes, Jesus might scold you, scold me a little bit. He's scolded me quite a few times in my life, where I've had to recognize that I make mistakes, that I messed that up, that I contributed to the mess up. But you bring it to him nonetheless, because where they couldn't, Jesus can. Now, where has they couldn't become your sentence. Think about it. Where has I couldn't, God, applied to your life? Name it, and then listen again as Jesus says, bring it to me. Bring him to me, he tells the disciples. And so they do bring the boy. Immediately, the spirit that is tormenting him attacks, throws him down. It's cruel. The demon that has tormented him for years, now in public, it strikes again, and everybody's watching this happen. Why does this happen? I preached maybe a few weeks ago about the man who was possessed by a legion of demons. That's what the devil wants to do to us, to God's creation. Wants to make us suffer publicly, to destroy us, to humiliate us. And then Jesus asks, how long has this been happening? From childhood. It often throws him into fire or water, tries to kill him. That's what the devil wants to do to us, destroy us, bring situations in our life that leave us full of shame, the mistakes that you make, the things that you shouldn't have said, the relationships that are broken, the things and actions you play over and over in your head. The devil tries to bring shame to your mind, to your heart. It's your fault. You did this. Look at what you did. Tries to throw you in the fire, throws you in the water to drown you. Then the man said, have compassion on us, Jesus, and help us. Now that phrase, if you can. Jesus, if you can, please have compassion on me. That's the voice of a parent who's been through way too much for way too long, and he's unsure if Jesus can. Can you, Jesus? But he's sure that he needs help. And Jesus responds with a, if you can, right? Verse 23, if you can. But then he says, everything is possible for the one who believes. Now, this is not talking about everything is possible, meaning, I always use a Ferrari, but it doesn't mean, I'm going to get a Ferrari, so I'm going to, God's going to give you a Ferrari. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about the kingdom of God, seeking restoration and healing and hope from God. Everything is possible for the one who believes. And then the cry of a desperate heart, one of my favorite lines in the entire Gospel of Mark, one that I try to live my life by. It's honest. Verse 24, Jesus, I do believe, but help my unbelief. Seems like a contradictory statement, right? But that's not doubt. That's actually discipleship. He's saying, my faith is real, but it's fragile. I trust you, but I need your help trusting. Friends, Jesus isn't looking for flawless faith. He's looking for honest, dependent faith. God, I know you're there. I believe that when I pray, you listen to me. But I'm struggling to believe that right now. But my situation doesn't let me see you clearly. Please take the fog away. I believe. I do believe. Help my unbelief. Can you say that with me right now? I do believe. Help my unbelief. You don't have to feel big to pray that. You just need to turn the right direction. And so then, Jesus speaks with power, you mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out and never return. The boy convulses, collapses. People think he's dead. But verse 27, Jesus says, Jesus took him by the hand, raised him, and he stood. He lifts the boy, and the boy stands up. Now, this is right after end of chapter 8. Jesus says, I must suffer and die, transfiguration. There must be suffering. And then they're met with a boy who's suffering, and the boy falls to the ground, and he lifts them up. Now this is a small little glimpse and picture of resurrection right in the valley. This isn't just a healing, it's a preview of what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to this world to defeat what overpowers us. And what's the thing that overpowers us the most in this life? What is the thing that brings the most pain, the most amount of fear? Death. Death seems final, like the end, like there's no more. But Jesus came to bring life where death seemed final. Now, some of you are standing over something that might look dead, figuratively and literally, maybe a relationship, a dream, a calling, a future, a ministry, and Jesus is reaching for a hand. He still raises today. He still restores today. He still brings life where hope has collapsed. Some of you might be staring death straight in the face right now. Someone you love might be struggling. Maybe they've received news that is not hopeful. Or maybe someone you loved has already faced death. But I want you to remember, through the power of Jesus, death is not the end. Resurrection is coming. Do you believe that? We say, God, I believe. Help my unbelief. Now later indoors, away from the noise, the disciples finally ask what we all ask when we fail. We're almost done here. Why couldn't we? Why couldn't we do this, Jesus? They had done it before, they'd healed before, but this time it just didn't work. And they don't know why. And Jesus answers, this kind, verse 29, this kind can come out but by nothing but prayer. Now some manuscripts add and fasting, but it's part of the same meaning. This is not about a technique. It's not that if you pray 5 hours, that equals half a miracle. If you add 5 more hours, that's 1 miracle. If you pray 24 hours, you can do 3 miracles. That's not how that works. It's about a posture. Jesus is saying some battles won't budge, some things won't change. You won't see me through just routine or experience or emotion. Gifting or talent won't get you there. It requires something deeper, not louder voices, but prayer, lower knees, so to speak. You don't need more talent, you need more prayer. We often think, if I just had more skill, if I just knew more. But Jesus is saying, you need to abide in me, or you're not going to make it. See, that's why prayer is important. It's not like a show I wasn't allowed to watch when I was a kid, but I watched it anyway. Dragon Ball Z. In that show, they got into a little pod and they charged up their power so that when they came out, they could release it. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about always being connected to the source that is God. Because otherwise, all those thoughts that the devil throws our way, all those darts that the devil throws at you, maybe it is hopeless. Maybe you don't have hope. Maybe you're going to remain this way forever. We won't be able to be sustained without being connected to the source and abiding in Jesus. Now, it's not the size of your faith, it's the direction of your faith. Small faith aimed at Jesus is stronger than big faith placed anywhere else. The Father didn't fake certainty. He brought what he had. And Jesus met him right where he was. So it's not your competence, it's your dependence. Talent will only take you so far. I remember when I was a kid, and I'll end with this. I loved music since I was a kid, and when I was a teenager, maybe like other teenagers dream, I dreamt of one day playing drums in front of large crowds. But it was for Jesus' name, not for my sake, to exalt Jesus. But later in life, I quickly realized that hidden deep within was actually a desire to be known as skillful and great. And look at me, I'm a great singer and a musician. And I wasn't dependent on God. I was seeking a high mountaintop moment where I was exalted. And Jesus had to teach me, it's not about you or your kingdom or being known or seeking this high mountaintop moment where people see you for the great person that you are. No, life is about being in the valley where you depend on Him, when you trust Him and you invite others to also join you in that place. And when struggles come and doubts come and you ask, is this Bible stuff real? Is Jesus real? Then you say, God, I do believe. Help my unbelief. Lastly, I want to emphasize that prayer is so important in this walk. See, sometimes we see prayer as the spare tire that we grab when life blows out. But prayer isn't the spare tire you grab when life blows out. Prayer is the engine that drives the whole journey. So hold on to God in the mountain and in the valley. Let's pray.